Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the Bureau of Justice Assistance National Training and Technical Assistance Center Justice Community Webinar focused on crime analysis. All phone lines are in mute mode and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. If you have a question, please feel free to type it in the Q&A feature on the right-hand side of your screen. We will answer at the end of the presentation. I'm now going to pass the time over to Rebecca Rose, BJA Senior Policy Advisor and BJA-NTAC Director. Becky?
Thank you, Pravi. And yes, it's great to have you all join us today for our Justice Community webinar. Today we're focusing on crime analysis, and we're going to have a great presentation for you. As Pravi said, my name is Becky Rose, and I'm a Senior Policy Advisor at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. In addition to overseeing the National Training and Technical Assistance Center, which is hosting this webinar today, I also oversee BJA's crime analysis portfolio. Today we're going to learn about one of BJA's efforts to share best practice information with you all in the field on crime analysis efforts across the country. Pravi, if we can go to the next slide. Several years ago, BJA made a concerted effort based on the request and the need that we were hearing from the field to enhance our training and technical assistance to you all around crime analysis efforts. And this slide just gives you a highlight of some of the things that we've been working on. The first one here is the BJA-NTAC Crime Analysis on Demand. This is a training and technical assistance opportunity for folks in the field who are interested in enhancing their crime analysis efforts. Through this Crime Analysis on Demand program, we match you all with a subject matter expert to come out and do things such as assess your crime analysis efforts, make recommendations on how to improve your department, and offer training as well. And the next thing here is the crime analysis for chief executive training. So for a couple of years now, we've been offering training to teams, agency teams as we like to say, which would include executives and analysts, to identify how to support crime analysis efforts within their departments and use that analysis to drive operations. This training is tailored. There's two ways that this training can be offered. One, through tailored training for your department or departments within the region, or we have several trainings throughout the country throughout the year that are available. And then finally, what we're going to focus on today is a project that we are working with IAR called Building a Nationwide Crime Analysis Capacity. Really, the purpose of this project is to leverage best practices and lessons learned from crime analysis centers from 3 different pilot sites. And so our team today, who is giving you the presentation, will be talking to you about that. At the conclusion of today's presentation, I'll share with you the links to access information on all these projects that I mentioned. But now I'd like to introduce your speakers today. This project has had the support and expertise of 2 nationally known experts in crime analysis, Dr. Rachel Santos and Ms. Jamie Rausch. Dr. Rachel Bova-Santos is a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice at Radford University in Radford, Virginia. Dr. Santos has been working with police organizations since 1994 and conducts best practice research on police organizational change, transparency and communications, as well as the institutionalization and sustainability of problem-solving, crime analysis, and accountability in police agencies to support their crime reduction efforts. She has co-created with Dr. Roberto Santos Stratify policing and assists police agencies around the country and internationally in implementing the organizational approach to institutionalize evidence-based crime reduction practices. She's recently completed 2 experiments partnering with police agencies to test the effectiveness of systematic police response in both short-term and long-term property crime hotspots. Since 2000, she has led the federally funded research and technical assistance projects in these areas for the National Institute of Justice, the Office of Community Policing, and then our Bureau, the Bureau of Justice Assistance. She has one of the only full authored books on crime analysis in its 4th edition, Crime Analysis with Crime Mapping, which was published in 2016 and has also been translated into Chinese. Dr. Santos earned her master's degree in Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology from Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. Our second speaker today will be Ms. Jamie Rausch. She's a partner with the CRH Crime Analysis Consulting, which is a provider for BJA for our crime analysis portfolio, and then she's a consultant on numerous aspects of crime and intelligence analysis, including the integration of social media with law enforcement data for operational decision-making. Ms. Rouse previously had a 10-plus-year career with the Jacksonville, Florida Sheriff's Office, first starting there as an analyst and then as the crime analysis unit manager, under which she commanded a unit of 20 public safety crime analysts and supervisors. She's a frequent speaker at law enforcement conferences and an author in law enforcement publications on crime analysis and social media. She's also a member of the George Mason University Evidence-Based Policing Hall of Fame for her commitment to using research and data analysis to improve police operations while in Jacksonville. She is an associate member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP, and a member of the International Association of Crime Analysts, IACA. Ms. Rouse holds a Master of Science degree in Social Science and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Geography from Florida State University. I read those lengthy bios because they are very impressive, and we're just really proud and honored to have Dr. Santos and Ms. Rouse on our team here with BJA on this project, and even more so to be able to have them talk with you all today about this project. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rachel Santos to kick off our presentation. Rachel?
Thanks so much, Becky. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to start today, Jamie, somebody saying something? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I heard somebody. We're going to start off and just kind of give you an overview of the project, and then really what all three sites are doing and what they've been able to give us in terms of this building the crime analysis capability in the toolkit. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So really the outgrowth of this project, and BJA provided funding to the to IIR to fund three sites to help us implement things and to help us develop a toolkit in order to advance crime analysis capacity. Now, it's possible to provide all the different tools and all the different things for crime analysis in one toolkit. So this is really focused in three areas. And our goal was to identify promising practices as well as the technology solutions in order to do that. As we all know, as many of us know, crime analysis, there hasn't been a lot of funding over the last, I've been doing this for about 20 years, and there hasn't been a lot of funding for crime analysis specifically. There's been a lot of funding for crime mapping, especially for the 1990s, early 2000s. And we were so excited, Jamie and I in particular were so excited about this project because BJA in their whole suite, but this project in particular, providing funding to crime analysts to help us build this toolkit. Now, for each of the three sites, they were provided funding from BJA to implement some things, develop a toolkit. They each had an SME, or subject matter expert, who worked directly with them on site to do these things, and then they created their toolkits, and then Jamie and I are the kind of project SMEs. We help each site to develop and make the tools generic. Next slide, please. So the project sites and BJA was looking at trying to cover as much as they could with this project. And so they put out the solicitation for three different types of centers, really. For a mid-sized agency, and who was selected for that was the Tempe, Arizona Police Department. Then they wanted to bring in tools and examples and best practices from a real-time crime center. And so that was Charlotte-Mecklenburg, North Carolina Police Department. And then finally, they wanted to look and hear from a regional partnership of agencies, and so that project was the Northern Ohio Violent Crimes Consortium, and the NOVCC. So these are our three project sites. They have been working over the last 2 years and implementing things, improving and looking at best practices, and then turning those things into a toolkit. So I'll go ahead and, next slide. I'll go ahead and pass this over to Jamie, who's going to talk about Tempe and Charlotte.
To work with them on the development of crime analysis, data warehouse, and spatial data engine. This is a big issue within the crime analysis field today. It's how data is actually housed, coming from computer-aided dispatch, CAD systems, and records management systems, how that information gets to the crime analysts and the intelligence analysts and are able to actually use that information for operational decision-making within the department. And Tempe had this as a concern that they had in terms of how they could provide some best practices succession on how to develop a crime analysis data warehouse and then ultimately turn that into a spatial data engine to be able to use it in a mapping component and to make it more visual from that standpoint. So they are able to kind of provide to the field essentially this data warehouse and the spatial data engine. In addition to that, one of the other things that departments across the country are dealing with related to crime issues are being able to identify some of your prolific offenders, the worst of the worst, and being able to make sure that departments are working smarter, not harder, at addressing some of their crime problems. Many of you have heard research talk about the various statistics out there of prolific offenders representing a larger portion of crime. And so Tempe actually was working on the development of a prolific offender database and understanding the activity space or where those offenders actually operate within that particular activity space in order to associate that to various crimes as well. From that, we were able to get both example products and databases that they are able to provide to the field as some best practices, which you'll see a few in just a second here. And then finally, they are actually providing information to the field on various metrics that can be done in terms of actually looking at departments and what is successful for crime and crime reduction. So today, we use statistics like the Uniform Crime Report or the Incident-Based Reporting System. We use sometimes demographic information, census information, other types of metrics to look at the health of a jurisdiction and a community as it relates to crime. But Tempe wanted to look at whether or not there were additional factors that could be added into that. What are some of these other things to look at metrics associated to success in dealing with crime? Are there other things that we're not necessarily considering? And so they've provided some suggestions for these types of metrics that other departments can look into and use to help look at their jurisdiction in terms of crime-related issues. Next slide, please. One of the examples, as I just mentioned, that Tempe is providing to us is the prolific offender tracking system. This particular type of tracking system is designed to actually take, on the left-hand side of the screen here, various offenses that a person is involved in, whether it be a robbery or a larceny, or even some sort of aggravated assault, and the role that they play in that situation. For example, the ability for them to actually be a witness or a complainant, a suspect, the victim, whatever the case may be. Obviously, because this is an offender system, it's designed to look primarily at those individuals who are suspects in crime, as well as people who've been arrested for these crimes in the past. And so, again, you take these particular offenses, and they're weighted based on the type of information, based on the severity of the crime, associated to the role or the weight that that person has in that role. So, for example, someone who's been arrested has a higher weight, as you see at the top there, than someone who's been a suspect, and obviously a victim, witness, complainant, subject as well. And the combining of these particular weighting structures are run against the actual RMS data to determine the prolific offenders that do come out of that particular project and the individuals who have the highest propensity of an arrest or suspect for those particular type of crimes. In this type of situation, it's really focusing much more on not just people who are associated to drive-by shootings or people who are associated to larceny or people who are associated to robbery, but it's a unique combination of those types of characteristics. In some jurisdictions, this has been done related to violent offenders. It's been done related to nuisance offenders. It's been done related to property crime offenders. So there are all different ways that these weights and roles can be combined in order to address whatever the operational need is for the department as well. Next slide, please. So once that process is actually run against the actual weights and the actual roles of these individuals against the RMS system, for example, you do end up getting an actual serious offender prioritization and tracking. And from there, you are able to actually see all of the different roles and things that the person is associated to. So this is a one individual scenario where you're able to see all of the different categorizations the person's involved in, what are their past histories, information about who they may be, if there's a photo associated to it, as you see here, and then other general notes that have been added either from individuals specifically that are part of that process, whether it's the analysts or detectives, or even more information that just simply comes from the narrative of police reports. So the ability to actually see these individuals specifically on this type of list. Next slide, please. From that, you're able to actually take all of that information and create this high-frequency contact list. So it is a listing of all of the different things that are associated to these individuals specifically, and you are able to actually lay out essentially all of the individuals in a prioritization. Again, you may have a couple hundred individuals for the various characteristics, roles, and weights that end up in your high-frequency contact list, but essentially you may only have the ability to actually operationally work 10 or 12 or 15 of those individuals to be able to actually do some additional follow-up or look into even further or address them from some other type of intervention type strategy. So again, this designs this in a way that allows people to see what that high-frequency contact list looks like, and you're able to actually operationalize that into actual decision-making. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned briefly, with offenders, they do have an activity space. It's all of the addresses that are associated to their past history. And when it comes to, for example, an arrestee, we have the address that they actually are arrested. You have the address of the incident that they've actually committed, as well as their home address. And so they have various types of activity space. By actually taking that high-frequency list that was developed in the previous slide and being able to operationalize that using a spatial data engine, as I mentioned that Tempe was doing, you can actually put that information on a map in a way that you can create a hotspot, essentially, which is what's done here. So look at the frequency of places where this person is known to associate specifically. So this is the known activity space for this particular type of offender. It does give you an idea of where they're mostly known to operate. Obviously, this is also very important if you are operationalizing the list and you need to send it out to precincts or districts or other areas. You have a very good feel for what their activity space is in being able to address those types of issues in the various areas that they operate. Next slide, please. So what this is the final version of this, which is overlaying crime hotspots or different types of crime for the types of offenders that you have, essentially, for those activity space. It's the joining, essentially, of crime that is specific to the characteristics that determine the list. So, for example, if the list was focused on property crime, these crimes would be property crime related. And you'd be able to overlay, for example, the actual activity space of selected offenders for property crime alongside crime as well. So it really is taking not just a one or two crime approach. So this particular larceny has happened, and I'm looking for people who have been associated to that area in the past. You're being able to aggregate all of those crimes together and all of the different associated addresses and activity space of those offenders and overlaying them together, which is a very important factor in addressing prolific offenders as well. Next slide, please. Moving on to our second site is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg, North Carolina Police Department. Charlotte-Mecklenburg, as Rachel noted earlier, their responsibility in this project and their importance of bringing best practices to the field is related to understanding real-time crime center approaches and operations. But more importantly, understanding how that falls in line and works with crime analysis best practices. And this is a really important thing. As part of the history of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, they have a very advanced crime analysis division, and bringing in a real-time crime center around the time that they've had some significant events in Charlotte over the last few years, it was always interesting how they were going to integrate those two things together. So for those of you who have a crime analysis division or a crime analysis unit and are thinking about a real-time crime center, or you have a real-time crime center and you're thinking about crime analysis as another component to that, this particular project was designed to look at how those two things interact essentially within a department and what are the best practices of doing so. Now, because there is a real-time crime center approach and more agencies are moving toward that particular approach as well, Charlotte was also to provide guidance for successful RTCCs, or real-time crime centers, along with crime analysis. So what are the types of things to consider if you already have crime analysis, like Faye did, and you are adding in a real-time crime center into your particular department. So one of the things that's really important here is that we were able to get from Charlotte, as part of the best practices here, we were able to get a video that was associated to the work that they're doing and kind of an overview of how the Real-Time Crime Center operates, what its significance is to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and the City of Charlotte, as well as how it follows with crime analysis and works with crime analysis. We were able to get policies and procedures that show the two delineations associated to these types of things. And then Charlotte was also to provide us some key components related to technology. So what are the different styles and types of technology that are able to be integrated into these two types of approaches, a real-time crime center and a crime analysis unit or division. Next slide, please. In the development of an RTCC, one of the things that Charlotte was able to provide here and as part of the toolkit is what are the types of things to consider in creating this RTCC. And one of the very first things, obviously, is personnel in general and staffing considerations. So as we often see with analysis across many departments, do you have sworn officers that are put into that capacity? Do you have civilians that are put into that capacity? Do you create a hybrid approach with sworn and civilians together? In addition to that, because they did have a very strong and still do have a very strong crime analysis division, how does that integrate with the RTCC? Are they physically housed in the same place? Are they housed in different places? Do they work in conjunction with one another? Is there a direct handoff between when something is handled by the Real-Time Crime Center and when it's then picked up, for example, with crime analysis? So there's a variety of different things that can go into essentially those two components and how those are integrated that they've provided. Outside of, for example, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department or in any Real-Time Crime Center, what other agencies or functions are necessary to integrate with the law enforcement analysis capacity? So, for example, what are the types of things, other departments that may be part of the city or the county that can be brought into that Real-Time Crime Center and provide value? And this is done in two different ways. This can be done through a personnel aspect, so you have people who are assigned to the Real-Time Crime Center from these other entities, like, for example, public transit that's mentioned here, or it can also be data that's integrated from those other entities into the Real-Time Crime Center, giving them access to property appraiser records or electric accounts or phone-related accounts or cable accounts or those types of things that are functions of other parts of the city or county that could be important to law enforcement analysis and crime analysis and the operations of the Real-Time Crime Center. One of the other considerations is your operational hours, and this is obviously a part of your personnel and your manpower and your ability, which is, do you operate 24/7? Do you have the staffing to operate 24/7? Is it an on-demand or on-call approach, for example? So a certain type of incident happens or a certain type of scenario takes place, and the Real-Time Crime Center is then kind of stood up on an on-demand basis. So those are the considerations. Also, if it's not 24/7 and it's not on demand, is it housed, for example, 18 hours a day or 12 hours a day? And when would those types of things be best suited for? Is it based on when the calls for service are happening, or was it based on specific types of crime that are happening as well? And then finally, one of the other guidances that came from Charlotte and continues to provide value is the nature of the chain of command and the supervisory position. Who is responsible for the Real-Time Crime Center? Is that done through an assistant chief? Is it done through a major? Is it done through a lieutenant or corporal? Is it done at a sergeant level? Where do they fall within the structure of the department? Knowing that their work affects most of the department, if not all, where are they best suited within the organizational structure of the department specifically? So what's the nature of that command structure look like? And this is also something that's very interesting in the crime analysis profession as well, is where does crime analysis fall within the organization? So Charlotte's not only providing some best practices related to where the Real-Time Crime Center is falling within the organizational structure, but also in the fact that they're able to say where crime analysis falls within Charlotte and any other recommendations and scenarios that they've provided associated to that. Next slide, please. When you break into kind of the personnel aspect of a real-time crime center, Charlotte was able to really kind of give us some substance, some true policies and procedures associated to the actual duties of the individuals who are associated to this type of work. And where they've come from their policies and procedures, this is a snippet you see here, is sometimes they can do background work on an investigation that's starting, a call for service that's just going out. They can identify, pass, and pass along information that's useful, including any video evidence that may be associated to it. Charlotte has a very large video camera system that they're able to see a variety of places around the city, and so they're able to take that essentially as evidentiary value that can support those active investigations and cases. So from a workflow standpoint with the real-time crime center approach, these operators are looking at what calls are going out, what information do they have, can they follow up on that information, and more importantly, can they get that information to the office or in the field quickly as possible to help start the process of their early investigation. The second aspect is that they can more reactively or retroactively go back and help investigators follow up on additional pieces of information, whether that's video archives or databases for relevant information. Not every case is going to be started by the real-time crime center. Just because of an operational situation, you may have 5 or 6 major incidents going on at the same time. So you're going to have cases that are not initially handled by the real-time crime center that investigators are still working on, and they may find that they need video evidence or they may need other types of information out of databases that are more about just kind of getting the information out of the database and truly analyzing the information as you would typically see with a crime analysis team. And so one of those real-time crime center duties is about helping investigators kind of navigate through those archives and the different databases. These individuals can also prepare reports on the activities of the real-time crime center. Obviously, it's very important that with any unit or organization that you stand up within a department, that there are, metrics and activities associated to the work that they do. Charlotte does a very good job of actually recording what incidents and what events the real-time crime center is involved in. So they do have reporting on those types of activities, and that's actually a best practice that they've brought to the profession in terms of one of their recommendations for real-time crime centers. Learning about new technology and how it operates and how it evolves over time. I'll talk about this in just a little bit more detail here in a minute, but real-time crime center personnel obviously need to have the best and brightest information. Like crime analysis has to have the best information as well. So this is obviously a place where the real-time crime center individuals and personnel can provide and gather information about specific types of technology and being able to address kind of how that might help the department, not just from a real-time crime center perspective, but also the department as a whole. Like technology, data is very important. You heard me mention about getting additional data sources that may be as part of the city or the county. So exploring those ever-expanding range of data sources that are routinely available. What data does someone else have that might be relevant to a crime-related issue, that might be helpful to an investigator who's just starting out, or even an officer who's just going to a call for service? So like the real-time crime center individuals can work on trying to understand new technology, also new data sources, and how that can integrate as well. It's a really good kind of consolidated place within the organization for these types of approaches because they are using this information on a day-to-day basis. Charlotte has also provided that other potential responsibilities might include like assisting with background investigations for new hires, preparing warrants, helping other outside agencies with requests. It's a little bit about bandwidth, and Charlotte has shared with us that depending upon how busy it is at various times of the day and the bandwidth and the number of people who are staffed at that time of day, you might have situations where they have a little bit more time to be able to do some of these other responsibilities. So it's something to consider, obviously, if you're starting a real-time crime center, is that are they going to be busy 24/7 if you're operational 24/7? Are they going to be busy 18 hours if you're operational for 18 hours? Or more importantly, are they going to have time that they can do these other tasks? And more importantly, what are those other tasks that they can be responsible for helping with as well? Next slide, please. Charlotte has also provided some, very key things that they found in terms of technology, as I mentioned earlier, about the kind of future of law enforcement technology and how they can provide these types of things. So some of this technology Charlotte currently has, some of it they're looking into. They've had at various points as well. But they've shared some kind of information about these different types of technology and how they may be beneficial to a real-time crime center approach or a crime analysis-related approach. So body-worn cameras, as we start to see the body-worn camera project that's going on around the country, facial recognition software, and the various types of facial recognition software that's out there. There are multiple companies that are doing it in the law enforcement world. The various social media applications that are out there, what information can be obtained from social media, what information cannot be obtained, what's legal, what's not, what are the different technologies that are aggregating information from social media as well, and then how external public and private video feeds can really be a part of kind of the DNA of your real-time crime center, or more importantly, to your crime analysis capacity. It's just being able to understand how all of those things really come together. As I mentioned before, Charlotte does have a very large video network. It is one that is both public and private video. So it's a very good best practice for how to integrate that, and they've shared with us and then within the toolkit the capabilities of bringing those different types of feeds together for the benefit of crime-related issues. Next slide, please. At this time, I'll pass it back to Rachel to cover the Northern Ohio Violent Crime Consortium.
Thanks, Jamie. And you can see that, based on Jamie's discussion, especially of the real-time crime center, that most police departments and of the 18,000 police departments in the United States, about 12,000 of those have 25 or fewer officers. And so a real-time crime center isn't necessarily realistic. Obviously, we will see real-time crime centers in large cities like New York, LA, and Charlotte. But what's also important is, and I think this is where the Northern Ohio Violent Crime Consortium comes in, is this regional effort to provide capacity to agencies who are smaller, who can't do the real-time crime center. They can't have a 5 or 6 crime analysts who can build off each other, but it may be a smaller police department with 25 to 50 officers who hires an analyst who's not quite sure what's going on, and to help them provide capacity. I'm in southwestern Virginia, and the nearest larger police department is Roanoke. They have several crime analysts, but then we have police departments around the area here, which is about an hour away, that are between those smaller agencies, and they're struggling for training. It's a long way to go to Richmond or to D.C. for training. So this regional effort is really important. So the Northern Ohio Violent Crime Consortium, their goals really were to bring that together, the crime analysis capacities assessment survey, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, and a process methodology, and develop a training plan for regional crime analysis, guidelines for data, and then examples of regional crime analysis products. That was really the deliverables for their piece of this overall project in the toolkit. Next slide. So the NOVCC was established in October 2007 through a Byrne grant, and they had initially had 8 Northern Ohio cities: Akron, Canton, Cleveland, Elyria, Lorain, Mansfield, Toledo, and Youngstown. And with the expansion and with this funding in 2015 that it started, they partnered with the Northeast Ohio Regional Fusion Center, and since then, through this initiative, and we'll talk about what these things are, they've expanded to include 37 agencies with about 120 individuals actually participating in monthly meetings to set the direction, priorities, and the things that the consortium is going to do to assist with agencies around the Cleveland area, the smaller agencies, suburban agencies. And really the purpose was to promote this whole time data-driven decision-making, evidence-based practices in order to prevent or reduce violent crime and participating law enforcement in Northern District of Ohio. Next slide. So in terms of their operations, it's important for them, and when they started in 2007 and since then, and this expansion was to have a clearly defined purpose, and that was to support crime analysis in the area. Importantly, they had some key academics partnered with researchers in the area in order to make this happen, to bring in best practices, to organize the training. And to do that, they developed organizational assessments and change plans. We're not going to talk about that too much today, but these are things, organizational assessments of the whole organization, not just the crime analysis, and help them implement evidence-based strategies. They provide training and technical assistance to help with data collection and analysis. A lot of times new analysts, especially those in smaller agencies, who may not have had a lot of training coming in, they have to learn the data. They may not be quite sure, what about calls for service? How do I access that? What's the difference between calls for service and unit history data? And then also the consortium talked about they're doing demonstration projects. So it's basically having one agency putting in evidence-based practices, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and sharing it with the others in the regional effort. And lastly, of course, any kind of regional effort, whether it's all these things that this consortium did or not, is all about information sharing and also evaluation. Next slide. So the most important, I think, not most important, but one of the things that I think an area that is looking to do a regional effort, a regional implementation of crime analysis to determine, trying to bring crime analysts together to provide training, is this readiness assessment. And this allows the regional effort to really assess what the different agencies need, what their capabilities are, and to focus the kind of training. A lot of times, what will be required is a stratified training, which is, certain agencies will get lower level stuff, there'll be some medium level stuff and high level. And what's important, what's the difference between regional training like this and something that can be offered by the International Association of Crime Analysts is that it's local, they don't have to drive far, and they meet other analysts in their area, and that's really important. So in terms of carrying out this capacity, we have in the toolkit, there will be an example of the instrument that they use and the methodology for using it. So if you're starting a regional initiative, you go to this assessment and you give it to the agencies. It can be either a structured interview or online, and it covers the administrative and organizational support for crime analysis, the data accuracy, completeness, use and format, and then the resources for staff. So this allows the regional effort and the police department itself, based on the results of this assessment, to kind of get a sense of where they are with crime analysis individually, and then as a regional, like I said before, to figure out, are most of our agencies that we're supporting, are they at the entry-level crime analysis, or they need some medium-level or high-level training? Next slide. So the training plan, the regional crime analysis program, it's not just a one-time thing, and this is the difference as well, because it's one thing of bringing a trainer in from wherever, an expert, say, oh, everybody, 30 agencies come together and they get this training. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about ongoing training program for analysts, also command staff and line officers, and meeting it where they need, what their needs are for that region. And there may be certain kind of problems, certain particular things going on. In this case, it was violent crime that the regional training can focus on. It's also more cost effective to conduct regional training, and you can't, these webinars are great, and I love them because we can reach out to a lot of people. But you guys know that sitting in a room with other analysts, talking about information, and sometimes the breaks are actually really helpful too, because you can chit-chat and talk, oh, we're dealing with this problem, that problem, and have regular contact that's outside the office. Talking about this type of stuff is really important. So, and also important just for training, for sharing information, and then keeping people connected to the regional issues and goals, and what's going on in the area, not just 10 or 20 miles away. But, some of these regional efforts, especially out west, where there are a lot more distances, could be, 100 miles, but they're still basically in the same region. Next slide. So, in terms of the regional crime analysis, developing a plan, and, the toolkit's going to have a lot more specifics. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time in this webinar. We just wanted to walk through and kind of give you guys a little taste of what's there so you can go there eventually and get that information. But step one would be that regional coordination. And you start with that assessment, bring people together, not only through the assessments, but asking people, focus group of what they need, what kind of training specifically. Step two would be stratifying that training by audience, not only by analysts that I implied before, but if you have line-level officer training, regional line-level officer training, manager training, and executive training, like BJA has, their initiative to do executive training. And that's a different kind of training than analysts get or that line officers get. And that's really important. And it's important in a regional effort to do all of those things. And step 3 would be then doing that yearly training assessment, which is seeing what people need, but also is the training meeting people's needs. So the assessment is evaluation as well as a future plan for future planning. And then step 4 is the implementation of that training plan. Now, the consortium calls their training this boot camp model, which again is bringing analysts in for about a week, 2 weeks together. They're all included, everybody's there, they're staying there. They do the training, and they have different types of training throughout the week. It's not just one person doing a whole 40 hours, but they have different things. They're talking about maybe a day on GIS, maybe a day on tactical, and the folks are the analysts and whoever's in that are in there together. They may have some social events at night just so they get that collegiality, because these people live near one another, work near one another, and will have to work together in the future. So that's kind of a basic overview, and again, we have more details. Next slide. So getting into the more details. That's really the snippet of what Ohio has done, and the crime, just to move kind of to wrap it up here, is crime analysis capabilities toolkit. What we have in the toolkit itself, and Jamie's going to give you a quick a view of the website, but really we have each project put together a logic model and a timeline methodology at the beginning of the project. And the logic model really laid out what their goals were, what the things that they did, the activities they needed to do to get there. We're going to include that in the toolkit because we think it's a good approach to any large initiative to do a logic model and a timeline to keep everybody on track, whether it's starting a regional crime analysis effort, whether it's starting that real-time crime center, or even just a crime analysis unit in a police department, to have those kind of things. And we'll set up a model and a methodology that you can actually take and use on your own. We also have case studies for each of the 3 sites. So a little bit of what we talked about today, but it's really the context of where the toolkit comes from. So it'll give a full description of the Ohio consortium or Tempe's crime analysis unit, how long it's been around, what are the things they kind of do, and how this project evolved on their side. And then the last thing are these guideline documents, products, databases, example policies. What we've done, and Jamie's my responsibility, has been to take what the agencies have produced and what the sites have produced and make it generic, make it usable for you. So if it's a policy, we take off whoever put that policy together and say, insert your agency here and you can make changes. We provide it as a Word document so you can actually do that. Databases themselves will give you the skeleton database. You can put your data in there in terms of the prolific offender database. There's a methodology that says how to use it. And it's just an access database, so it's basic software. And then guideline documents, how to do that assessment process with the regional crime analysis. So that's kind of how what the toolkit is going to be made up, and I'll turn it over to Jamie, and she can talk about the delivery of that. Next slide.
Thanks, Rachel. So the idea behind the Crime Analysis Capabilities Toolkit website, which this is a conceptual drawing of what the actual site will be. For those of you who are interested in the design, it actually is based on the Violent Reduction Network's clearinghouse site. So you can also Google that site or actually go and get information from that site to see kind of the way this works. But essentially, what we will do with this particular toolkit and the delivery aspect of it is that different resources are going to be filtered by various categories. So those toolkit categories cover assessment, organization and culture, policies, technology, data, training, and analytical techniques. Now it'll also have a resources guide as well, so there will be different resources that can fall into some of these categories, and then other resources that the site and Rachel and I have put together to provide kind of an idea behind different types of places to go and get more information. So when you come to the site, you'll be able to browse by those various tools. So if you do need information, for example, on the data that's used by Tempe to create their database, you'll be able to go directly to the data section and talk about and review things like cleaning and standardizing data, supplementing data, adding information into systems, being able to actually take that data and turn it into a spatial data engine for mapping capability. If you go to the technology section, you'll be able to see different types of specifications for servers that you may want to actually acquire for different types of approaches as well. So you'll be able to browse by the different types of things that you need specifically within the actual toolkit. Next slide, please. In addition to that, the resources will also be filtered by the different types of organization. So as we talked about from the beginning, each of these sites represented a different organizational structure, an agency, a regional effort, and a real-time crime center. So even though you may be a local department and you may be interested in doing a real-time crime center, you can go to things like the agency as well as the real-time crime center and have the flexibility of being able to pull things from various parts of information that you need specifically. Now you'll notice that this grouping is over on the left-hand side of the screen, so you have to turn on and turn off different types of things. Under each grouping, like for example the regional here, you know that there's one policy that's related to the regional effort. You'll notice under the regional there's three related tools associated to data, whereas the real-time crime center there are two associated to that. So every tool will be actually tagged associated to what place it falls into in terms of the different organizations, as well as the type of tool that it is. Next slide, please. Once you've actually selected this information, then you will actually be able to save your toolkit. And that saved toolkit can be shared between other individuals in your department, or if you want to share it with someone outside of your department, it also can be remaining available for you for a specific period of time. So you can come back and say, oh, okay, these are the different types of things that I put in my toolkit, and being able to actually get that information as well. So not only are you going to be able to select the different organizations and also select the different types of tools, you'll be able to actually comprise your own kind of custom toolkit from these various elements that are here, the various tools that are provided, to be able to come back to as you need and when necessary as well. Next slide, please. So with that, we thank you very much for your participation. We'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. The first question that we got for the group is there a particular software system Tempe is using to connect to RMS?
So that is a great question. So currently Tempe is using the Versadex RMS system. That's the actual system that their agency uses for records management. However, Tempe is one of their best practices. They've actually taken the information from the Versadex system because of the complexity of the system, the number of tables, the amount of structure that was behind it. They're actually copying that information and comprising it into their own crime analysis database. So it's being done through a copy, and that information is being manipulated through routine processes in Microsoft SQL as well as Microsoft Access. So the toolkit associated to Tempe related to data will have different queries associated to SQL and Access. Most organizations have some sort of usually enterprise license associated to Microsoft, which Access is part of. So we wanted to make sure, and Tempe wanted to make sure that even though they were using some routines in SQL, that they also wanted to be able to provide it in Access. And I think Rachel mentioned earlier that most of the databases that are in the toolkit will have an Access format that you can replace the information within that Access database with your own.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. In addition to that question, it was asked, can we get a copy of the matrix Tempe is using?
This is Rachel. I'm not quite sure in terms of that question. If you're talking about the metrics, the crime analysis metrics, that yes, that will be part of the toolkit. If you're talking about the matrix in terms of the database for the prolific offender, then yes, again, like Jamie said, that we will be providing a skeleton prolific offender database that will have a methodology that you'll be able to use. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think that answered the question. As a follow-up, when will the toolkit be available?
This is Becky Rose. Are we still there? Bobby, are you still there?
I'm still here, yep.
Okay. Jamie or Rachel, do we have a timeline for this, or Terry?
It is scheduled to be done by the end of July, so should be just a few months down the road. It's in progress now, so we're hoping to have it available by the end of July 2017.
Great, thanks, Terry. One of the reasons we wanted to share this with you all, this is Becky again, just to add to that before it's released, is just to, kind of understand your questions you might have and anything that, any tweaks we may make to the toolkit as we put the final touches on it. So as soon as the toolkit is released, you all will be contacted directly with that information. Thanks. Go ahead, Pravi.
Thanks, Becky. How are RTCCs planning to use FRT?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. How are RTCCs planning to use FRT?
I think, Jamie, did you want to take that about the facial recognition technology? I think that's what that question is.
Yeah, just for clarity, you're talking about the facial recognition software, is that correct?
Yes. Person clarified, yes, they are.
Okay. So in terms of the RTCC, one of the things that they're looking at is how that information can be used, what databases essentially go into the facial recognition software. So, for example, is it driver's license data for that state? Is it multiple states? Is it data that is housed within a specific system that they purchase? There's always the various components in terms of what data your actual picture or image that you have is associated to be compared to. So in terms of this particular project, one of the things that they, RTCC and Charlotte have shared as part of a best practice is, what are those different data sources that they found success in the past in terms of getting into the system initially, and then also what are the types of images and quality of images that they've been able to get actual hits on as well. So it's really more of looking at that technology as a whole and being able to say kind of what are the different parameters that they found success that they can kind of give a leg up to best practices and to the professional, and if you're getting ready to embark in that particular aspect of whether it's facial recognition or even other technologies.
Great, thank you. Also, there's been a couple of questions. This webinar is being recorded, so we will send it around in an email to all attendees in addition to the presentation. The next question we received is, what size is Tempe PD in terms of sworn and population, and is there a definition of a mid-sized department?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. This is Rachel. That's funny, a very good question. Tempe is, I think they're, and I don't have it right in front of me, anywhere between 375 and 425. They serve a population of about 160,000, 170,000. Somewhere in there, but they have Arizona State University, which is the largest university. So Sun Devils, that's my alma mater, so the largest university in the country. Now, mid-size, according to federal government standards, small agencies are considered, or medium-sized agencies are between 50 and 100. Anything over 100 is considered large. So I think when this mid-sized agency idea came about, what we're thinking about is selecting, and BJA selected an agency that their problems and the things that they develop could translate to all, probably that size agency and smaller, but maybe not to 25 to 50, but maybe between 50 and, 500. Anything higher than 500, in an inner city situation, their kind of issues of crime analysis changes a little bit, but so mid-size, let's take mid-size agency in terms of this definition very loosely. How's that?
Great, thank you. Follow-up question to the toolkit. Will there be additional costs to use the toolkit?
This is Becky. No additional cost to use the toolkit. It'll be on a publicly available website and free to you all to look around it, browse, download things, develop your own crime analysis toolkits with the resources up there. So no cost.
Great. Thanks, Becky. Another question, what is the difference between a real-time crime center and a fusion center? Is information shared between the two if both exist in an area?
In terms of the real-time crime center and fusion center, there are a lot of conceptual ways that people think about what real-time crime centers do versus fusion centers. This particular project actually did not address that particular element of it. It didn't look at the definitions between those as well. I think one of the things that's important that Charlotte talks about with the RTCC is how you have other outside entities, whether that be a fusion center or other city-county organizations, that can kind of fuse information together and you can get information from. So in the example of North Carolina has a fusion center. That information does flow into the RTCC. It does flow into the Crime Analysis Division through normal processes into Charlotte. So it is being able to bring that information together in terms of best practices and definitions and kind of the differences between those aspects of it. That was not the focus of the project here for Charlotte, and doesn't have a lot in the toolkit that addresses that particular element.
I think also too, the fusion centers have a specific history with the federal government and Homeland Security. So a lot of times, and not all the time, a lot of times those fusion centers use more the rhetoric and the language and products for Homeland Security to support that. With different task force, their analysts are doing slightly different things, though it gets a little muddy. Over the years, it's gotten a little muddy, but I think the original intention of fusion centers, where real-time crime centers are just that, to support the police department in the officers, the detectives in real time.
Great. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I will pass it back to Becky to close the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Tavi, for moderating that Q&A, and thanks to you all for the great questions for our team on the call today, on the webinar today. I want to thank Rachel and Jamie for their presentations today, and really appreciate you all sharing the information. We're really excited about this project. As mentioned, the toolkit will be developed sometime this summer, or released, I should say, sometime this summer. As you can tell, there's a lot of work being done on it. So I think a lot of the questions you've asked will definitely help us think about any tweaks that need to be made to it. I also want to offer a special thanks to Terry Tate and Phil Raymer from IIR for helping to pull together this webinar today and also serving as the project managers over this project with Rachel and Jamie as the subject matter experts. So we hope you were able to learn more today about what's working in the field, how they're doing, how these different pilot sites are doing their work. Obviously very unique, some very unique activity happening, and really hope you're able to take some information from them and take it back to your departments today. Our continued support and knowledge exchange doesn't stop here with you all. As you can see here on this slide, on this resources slide, I've shared links to the programs that I described earlier, Crime Analysis on Demand, the Chief Executive Training around Crime Analysis, which Analysts offers the training program on behalf of BJA, and then finally a link to IIR, which has a little bit of information on the crime analysis work to date, but again, that's eventually where the toolkit will be housed. In the meantime, before the toolkit is released, if you're looking for training and technical assistance, please visit, as you can see here, BJA-NTAC, which is the National Training and Technical Assistance Center. That is a center where you can at any time request training or technical assistance at bjatraining.org. And my team will work with you to assess your needs, your crime analysis needs, and find the right training or technical assistance program or response to address those needs. We work with a wide cadre of subject matter experts like Rachel, like Jamie, and a lot of other folks to be able to address those needs that you might have, get folks out in the field, these subject matter experts to you all in the field, and offer training as well. So finally, in addition, we have, as Tavi mentioned, we have recorded this webinar, and we'll be sending out the recording with the slides in the next few days. So thank you again for joining us today, and hope you all have a great day.